My name is Lenka Kominkova and I would like to tell my opinions what is the differences between cinematography and videography. It's a little bit of contention things. What you call yourself on set. Whatever you are, a videographer, a director photographer, a cinematographer, a filmmaker. Nowadays a little bit more fluid, and it also does kind of depend on when you live in the world or what your industry looks like. The term filmmaker is a little bit of an odd one, because in a sense we all kind of the filmmakers. We all work in the film. Filmmakers, in my experience, tends to be people who work around the camera, like the director of the director photography, and more often than not, a filmmaker or somebody who tells them a filmmaker is doing this more as a hobby, not really as their main source of income, and they tend to work on independent projects and self-funded projects. People who call themselves filmmakers don't necessarily work as a part of the large team. They tend to be kind of fluid with what they do. They shoot, they direct, they do the producing. They do pretty much everything. That's just my experience. There are definitely exceptions to this rule. Anybody can really call themselves a filmmaker if they want to. That sort of skill set is very transferable to videographer. Videographer and cinematographer, they both are starting to work on similar types of the productions. But ultimately a videographer is somebody who shoots unstructured, typically works on things like events, weddings, corporate videos or news coverage. They normally work more independently and wear a lot of more hats on a production. For example, videographer will normally have to ruin his own sound, set up his own lights, direct the shot, and a lot of times edited. They are the jack of the trades type of the shooters. You have to be ready for anything as videographer, and it's so true. Videographer is a really hard field of if you are not prepared. They kind of have to be a cinematographer or director of photography is someone who works on the more structured types of shoots, like music video, movies or commercials, and they are usually working under the director. They work with a bigger crew that consists of camera assistants and lighting team. Now as the grip and electric, they don't wear as many hats on the production, but they are in the charge or given direction all the different departments that you are going to affect the way that the shoots looks. They don't have to do their own sound. Act will be taking care of technical parts of the camera, like building it, carrying it or organizing the footage, and in a lot of cases even owning if the production is big enough. There will even be camera operator that use the camera for director photographer. Director photography just directs the camera and lighting team similarly to how a director would direct across the director photographers are shooters. They are more specialized and focus only on picture, and they do these things to help bring a director's vision in life. So lots of cases director photographers aren't always doing them with things, where with videographers a lot of times they are doing all the work themselves. It doesn't mean that videographer doesn't work in the team. It's just more common that the videographer is doing everything on his own reason. The reason why I say that the bridge between the two is starting to grow thinner is because videographers don't only work on the unstructured projects, and director photographers don't only work on structured projects. They both work on commercials, which a lot of times are more structured. Director photographers work on documentaries, and they have to understand how to set up audio or work with little to not crew sometimes. Sometimes the director of music videos is also director photographer. So to me these are times where if you were to figure which one you are playing to role or on a set, it would be kind of confusing. Which one you are technically doing, but generally speaking videographers shots an event, he would be asking where all the motivation is coming from, and he would miss every shot and make the event start over, and you wouldn't call someone shooting a narrative film narrative videographers. It just sounds weird. If you are a videographer, you are doing mostly like events and corporations where you are the only person in the room. You are only person doing this job. More often than not, you are not really gonna have any help with you. So you are responsible. There are more things to do, more things that you can go wrong. And you have to be ready to solve any issue. Compared to being director of photography, which in itself a huge role, massive. It's head of the department role. But you have got a team behind to help you out. Doesn't put any less strain on your things. You still have a lot of things to think about. But you are gonna have backup anywhere. As a director photographer, you are not lighting, you are not directing, you are not doing sound. You are not doing any of that stuff what a videographer typically does. That is the most cases. There are always exceptions to the rule. But director of photography is typically only trained in camera and lighting, and that's what they will do. They are not necessarily trying to be a gaffer either, but they are trained to express what they want to grapher to be. Able to get the result that they want. As a director of photography, you often have a lot of hand in the concept creation of things. But all we think the post-production and getting the color grade done and making sure that you maintain the image from start to finish as per what the brief is. This is kind of similar to videography as well. You do have end result you want to give the client, but in the case, things are a little bit more delicate. So, cinematographer or director of photography? Good question. I would say the cinematographer has a little bit more gravitas than the director of photography. It's kind of like cinematography, it's titled that you earn over years and years and years or working as a director of photography. I tend to refrain from calling myself a cinematographer unless I briefly have to explain something. Because a lot of more people understand the term cinematographer over a director of photography, I have found, but I feel like the cinematographer has a little bit more weird to it. And it needs to have that experience backup in the behind. But you aren't. This is where your lines blur. I don't do film a hobby. I tend to stay away from the independent production, which is always, I don't call myself a filmmaker. I don't do other things beside the camera department as well. So that ties into the videography I can do. Videographer I am not. I can do corporate. I can do live events. I think I do stay away from them because they are completely different ballpark completely. But I can do these things because I'm skilled in the camera department, but I do have basic knowledge of the sound and lighting. Enough to be able to do sort of the jobs, but I wouldn't call myself a videographer because I'm not solely trained in this part of the jobs. So you see that there's a lot of overlap. I wouldn't worry too much about these feelings or what you are working or because I think that it's important even thing that work on the project with different structures, they both have the same goals and at the end of the day use a camera to tell the story and make the image look beautiful.